What kind of staff do you think that you need to have to make your camp successful?
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hudson, and I'm the camp director at Camp Highlight, a sleepaway camp for kids who have LGBTQ parents.
And my name is Gabrielle Rail, and I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Oro, an all-girls camp in the Laurentian Mountains, and we focus on creating a safe environment for gender minorities.
My name is Joe Richards. I'm the executive director at Pierce Williams Summer Camp and Retreat Facility in Fingal, Ontario, part of the United Church of Canada's camping network. So today we're going to talk about staffing from a different angle because we know that staffing is a challenge in our camp communities right now. So we'll start that in a second, but first a word from our sponsor, UltraCamp. Ever feel like you're spending so much time at the office that you have no time left for camp? With UltraCamp, you can track attendance, manage staff applications, and streamline registration so you'll be back outside in no time. Find out more at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. Awesome. Travis is unable to be with us today, but we're gonna cover this topic and see how we do. So, Chris, can you introduce us to your thoughts on what we are going to talk about today?
Sure. I just have to point out the elephant in the room is that everybody everywhere is talking about staffing. It is the issue du jour. It's the thing that I think is on people's mind and we're worried about, just the events of the last couple of years. Just things just feel really different than they did 3 or 4 years ago, or 4 or 5 years ago, actually. So this is something that we were thinking about at the end of the camp session this summer. What do we need? Who do we need? Because, often, oh man, I'm talking out of turn here, but sometimes we'll be like, okay, if we need a staff of 30, we need like 24 really great people, and we can just have like 6 bodies, and that will be great. And after all the heavy lifting of the last year, I've been thinking about that. Like, no, I kind of want everybody on staff to be super skilled and super invested. And I'm not to say that we can't take staff who the first year at a camp that they're still learning. I think that's important. But like, I know, again, I don't know if I should be saying all this stuff in public. I know I have made hiring decisions that are not necessarily ideal for the camp, but they're ideal for numbers. And when I think about the qualities that I'm looking for going forward, I think that's it. I really want people who are super invested in the mission and the vision of what we're doing. If you have no childcare experience for it, that's okay. We can guide you through there. But I really want someone who's going to put attention to developing these skills and not just killing time in the summer, because won't it be fun to take a bunch of pictures with all these kids and then I can put them on social media and everyone think I'm cute. And how do you test for that is another question, but I've talked too much. Gabz, what do you think?
I love your thoughts, Chris. I think I hear what you're saying. And a couple of years ago, I made a decision that pretty much on leadership team, especially, I wasn't going to make compromises to quote unquote fill spots. And there's too much of a long-term ripple effect if you don't have the right person. And so some years we have a leadership team of 8, and some years we have a leadership team of 10 or 11. And of course, that's a privilege that I have with some flexibility within our finances because I have control over where I want to put my finances so we can cut back on marketing and et cetera, et cetera. It's a lesson, though, that I have to keep retelling people within my organization because staff's timeline at camp is anywhere between, 2 years to perhaps 6 or 7 years. But in their first 2 years, if they don't see a certain type of position, and then I introduce that position for them, it's like, why do we have this whole new position available? It's like, oh no, that's always a possibility. And just informing our staff of some of these shifts, or you're not owed this spot because you've been with us for 4 years. This is not, you're not the right person. But I think when we're looking at staff as maybe perhaps self-centered as it sounds, I'm looking for people that can best support me. And I'm looking for people that I can work with. And my values match, hopefully, the camp's values. But I need a team where we can work together. And I think that I do talk about starting with yourself a lot. And I maybe sound like a broken record because I do come back to it. But I think I agree with you, Chris, on sometimes we look at just simply the numbers and say, we gotta have 24 staff. And sometimes actually 22 is way better because those two others, they're just
Exactly.
they're not worth it.
And the stress and toll it takes on the other staff
Yes.
who have to support this staff who's not necessarily ready. And again, I want to asterisk, I'm not talking about people who lack the skill, but perhaps lack the motivation and focus.
Yeah. And maybe that's what you need is motivation and focus, motivation and focus. That's very important for you. And I think that's important to be transparent with your board and with the people that you're hiring.
Definitely.
And I think that over time, what I've seen as a camp director is this idea that not having that person who takes up more of your energy actually helps the other staff perform better. They're more than willing to step into any void that is left if there's a single position, right? So if somebody sucks at what they do when they draw that energy away and introduce drama, it's not worth having them at camp. And you never know who those people are going to be at the beginning. There's a different approach depending on how many camp staff you're hiring. So I once upon a time worked at a camp where I hired for 2 camps, and I hired 240 people a summer. Wow. And once you get to a number of 240 people a summer, what my business manager said is you're going to hire some bad apples. Like you just can't, you can't get away from it. You're going to have some people who just aren't. And that's where like that idea of a warm body, which is how nonprofits struggle with board members as well, right? We just need a body to fill. No, I would rather have someone who's engaged. I'd rather have fewer people who are engaged in the process. And I think that the key in the kind of staff I'm looking for personally are staff who are willing and can be trained, right? And want to. I want them to have some passion. And I was recently talking to a consultant about some fundraising stuff, and she said, it doesn't matter if this person knows anything about fundraising. I can train them. They need to have a passion for your mission. And I was like, that's great. And I think that if we approach that from the camp staff perspective, I think that's what we're looking for, is people who have a passion for camp and for kids and for helping. And we can really train them in our culture.
How do we test for that? Like I've been listening to both of you talk, and it's like, oh, we want people who support us, sure. We want people, we want people who are passionate, sure. But then, like what you said, Joe, like if you're hiring a ton of staff, like, you're going to get some bad apples. Like we take that as a given. I just want to rock back on that. Bad apples to me, when I think bad apples, I think rotten to the core. And I'm hoping, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, yeah, sure, some people who want to work at camps just don't have any redeemable skill for that, or that are not going to add value, or at least, at least add what they take away. You know what I mean? But
how many camp staff do you hire, Chris?
How many do I hire every summer?
Yeah.
New camp staff?
Nope. Just in your entire staff complement.
25 to 30.
Great. And I'm somewhere around 35 to 45. I'm not sure where you're at, Gab.
70-ish.
70-ish. Here's the thing. The smaller your camp staff goes, the less you can hire bad staff, because they're going to rot the entire bowl of fruit much faster.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Than if you had 240 staff.
Absolutely.
And so how do you test? I think a lot of it, and this is the weirdest part, a lot of it is gut. Like the longer you do this job, the sooner you can make that choice sitting at a table and meet someone, or at a group interview, right? Where you see, because the group interview isn't about the interview. The group interview is about your interaction, right? And it's going to be tough if we're not doing in-person interviews again this year, and they're all online.
Yeah. I saw your head go back, Chris, when
No,
Joe said gut.
yeah, you have to trust your gut. You absolutely do.
Mhm.
But I want to introduce this into the conversation, right? I'm a man of a certain age, and I have been doing camp for a really long time. And my ideas about camp and what makes a good camp professional, budding camp professional, like it grows and it changes and I learn. But I know that like the leadership staff is younger than me, right? Our assistant directors are younger than me. And when they sit in interviews, they are able to respond to things that I'm like either missing or not attending to. You know what I'm saying? Or not valuing. I've been thinking a lot about this, and this is why leadership teams are really important, and it doesn't sit on just one or two people who've been doing this for 20 years, is because like I trust my gut. I do. And for sure, my gut has saved us from bad staffing decisions. But the older I get and I'm just gonna be honest, the older I get, the more I'm like, am I still like 10 years from now when I'm sitting across from like a 22-year-old, do I know enough? Do I have enough experience with 22-year-olds to test for these qualities, right? In the way that they're going to present in someone a few generations behind me. Do you know what I'm saying? Do either of you two worry about that at all?
Oh, I love that you're bringing it up. I remember one meeting that I went to for, I think it was the Quebec Camp Association, and I was on the team to do their conference. And one year, I was always the young person in the room and presented as such. And then one year I was presented as the young whippersnapper. Literally the next year, and I'm not exaggerating this, I was presented as the veteran of the group. And I was like, well, and I said it in the group, I was like, how did this happen in 12 months? Now I'm the old person. And I think in camp, a lot of the times it's weird because younger individuals compared to other jobs have a tremendous amount of responsibility. So at 21, 22, 23, the amount of that's old in camp years. And the responsibility that you have at camp is quite high. And then if you go in the outside world, you're just this young individual. And I think that it messes with you a bit. And then I think before you blink and know it, you're now the old camp director that's having a hard time connecting to the staff members. So maybe you were old at camp, but you were always able to connect to the staff. And now with generational shifts, of course, and of course also with what's going on in the world, there's a little bit of a, I think, quite drastic shift in expectations and a drastic or a lack of communication and trust within different generations, and maybe a trust in ourselves. And I think that the shakiness that I felt from my staff this summer, and they were shook, and it was evident in their behaviors, and I couldn't give them any sense of comfort, which I usually can. I can give them comfort. We can have a nice conversation, and afterwards, it just, I could feel the tension, dissipate. And this year, I just was not able to do that very well. And I have to, I think, give myself a little bit of a break in saying, I'm not just somebody that's, oh, now I'm older and now I can't connect with them. I too have gone through stuff. I too am managing my own feelings. And I think that the piece that I'm trying to do with my staff is, how do I build that trust? And I agree with Joe in the sense of gut. And sometimes in the past, I've had leadership team members that are, of course, younger than me that have said that staff member they're going to be a great leadership team member. And I'm like, are you bleeping kidding me? This little punk? But I trust them. I trust them. Maybe I don't have that connection to that staff member, but I trust them. And I've yet to be disappointed in trusting the people that I've created those connections. I think that what's going to be important moving forward is, how do we build trust and connections with our staff members throughout the year before the summer, so that we can lead them, so that they trust that we're on their side. And I think that's what I found difficult this summer. Sometimes I was put in the position that I wasn't on their side, which was absolutely not the case, but they were experiencing a lot of feelings and I need to try to connect with them and also give myself a break and understanding I went through stuff too. So I'm not maybe picking up on things I usually would, but that's not because of me. I think that's, the circumstance.
I think there's an idea of trust that is huge, right? Trust in your leadership team members, trust in other people to see potential in someone. And that's massive, but also trust in your own self, right? To say, I've seen this type of person before. And as much as you think they're going to be successful, but then there's also this component. So a couple of things, Chris, you said you don't know how you can relate like in 10 years from now. The reality is it's not like you're taking 10 years away from the camping industry and then stepping back in. Every year we get reintroduced to 22-year-olds and to 18-year-olds. And for me, 15 and 16-year-olds, right? I get reintroduced and sort of, have a feeling of what's changing as we're going, and staying connected through the year is a really huge component to this. But also there's still times where one of my things about camp directing is that you also need to let people fail for them to learn the lesson that you might have learned in the past. And I say this because there are times where a camp director has made the choice about hiring a person in a position. And in their minds, they might very well have had the best interests of camp at heart, but also their own sanity. Because what I find with 35 staff, let's say we're hiring 35 staff here at Pierce Williams, it can seem daunting if you've only ever hired 35 staff. But, I come in from a very different perspective. We're at like 240 staff. So, there were summers I started camp without 35 staff, right? Like you just live what you live. And so some people have it in their minds, some camp directors have had it in their minds that they really want to get fully staffed as early as possible. And they're unwilling to wait, and they're willing to compromise. And so that idea that Gabz said of no compromise is most important, right? Trust and compromise. No compromise. We're gonna do this thing with these staff, and these are the qualities we're looking for. And there are times where I've let these things go ahead because I know I'm not going to be the direct supervision of this person who's going to be a challenge. And then how much energy, but I also understand how much energy it soaks away from that person. And what I have found as I get older is I tend to care less and less and less about what anybody else thinks about me. But I think that for me, that has been I have been fairly comfortable with that. At Gabz, who's known me for years, I've been fairly comfortable with this for 20 years. But I think that what you have with young people is that's what I want to teach people, Chris. I want to teach people how camp can be magical. And I want to teach you not to care what other people think about you, because you can be an amazing camp staff, even if other camp staff don't like you, right? You can be amazing with kids. It's going to be a challenge for our camp community, but I've had some amazing counselors who don't get along with any of the other staff, but for the kids, they're the best possible thing.
But are they?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, but okay, well, hear me out here. That it's really interesting that you would say it that way, because like we started off asking the question, like, what qualities are we looking for? And the ability to work in a team, especially for the way, we have a small camp. So it's like you said, like we can't really have like a lone wolf or someone who does things their own way. Like you really have to lean into the teamwork. And for someone who's like great with kids, but can't communicate, or strike that, can't, but has challenges communicating with staff, or like, building sort of that team energy. I don't know. And maybe it depends on your program, or maybe it doesn't, but I just feel like, is that the best thing for the kids?
But I also don't think it's a communication. For me in this specific circumstance, it wasn't a communication issue. It was that he was different. And we all know as camp directors that different isn't bad. Different is just different. Right. And so I treated it as a learning opportunity for the staff. And he came one summer, worked with us for one summer, and then left because in many conversations I had with him, he felt like the the other staff weren't trying to get to know it. The parent surveys from this guy's cabins were what you want in every parent survey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is where you want to balance, because you want to find staff that can be part of the team or part of the family, right? And with family, we don't have to like the rest of our family, but we have to respect the rest of our family. And that's where I think young people and young camp directors especially can be mistaken to think that they need people to like them, when they need people to respect them, and they need their staff to respect the other camp staff and what they bring. Because as a jigsaw, we're not all the same piece. But if you are the same piece, that's a very hard jigsaw as well.
So glad we worked in a conversation about saws.
No,
so glad about that.
Well, jigsaw puzzle piece. Come on.
Okay.
I didn't say the S word, because you've banned the S word.
Gabz, you were going to say.
Well, I was going to say, for me, the way I look at my staff, first year, you have a lot more elasticity if it's your first year on staff, in, working with others, working with me, building that trust. But the second year, I expect, a level of capability more than the first year staff members. My rule of thumb is, by your second year, you should be able to work with 80% of our staff. You don't need to work with everybody, but I should be able to pair you with 80% of our staff. And every camp has their own mathematical, difficulties on who you pair with. At our camp, our co-counselors are French and English, and need to be a certain age. And there's some real dynamics where, it's limited who I can pair you with as a co-counselor. So I do need to have that flexibility. And if I'm seeing, like, no matter where I pair you, it's not going to work well because you're incapable of working well with others. Sure, you might be great on stage and maybe you're very popular. And also equally so, they have to work well with supervisors. They're also your teammates. And that's something that we've presented a handful of years ago, that you're responsible for working with your peers, and this is what this looks like, and working with supervisors, this is what that looks like, and what does that type of positive relationship, what's the outcome of that? I also find, for me, one of the pieces that gets in the way a lot of the time is how people deal with conflict. And I want to hire staff members that are going to talk to me about things that they're frustrated about. And so one of my favorite questions that I have in our interviews is, tell me about a time when when you were part of a conflict. And if they don't know how to answer it, I just say, maybe perhaps a school project. and then, eyes light up and they're like, oh, let me tell you. So if somebody tells me about this conflict, and by the end, it didn't bother me, everybody was, everybody's allowed their own opinions and blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for grit. I'm looking for somebody that's a little bit irritated, that's a little peeved about what happened, and that's able to say, in hindsight, this is what I would have done differently, or I wish I could have, but they're able to be transparent about maybe their own actions in the conflict, but also that they were frustrated by other people's behaviors, and that they don't have to mask for me that everything is, they don't mind conflict, and they just try to stay out of it as much as possible, because at camp, conflict's going to come up. But more importantly, I need them to see that it's okay that you get frustrated. It's okay that you get angry, as long as we're able to talk it through. And I give every chance to them to be successful in this question. I will reiterate it so that they do feel comfortable talking about it.
No, I love that. And I'm the same way. We ask a similar question about conflict. Tell us about a time when you had to work with others and it didn't go the way that you wanted. And also I was thinking about, I also am looking for people, definitely the grit. You said it so perfectly that I didn't think about it that way, but the grit to want to get to the end of a conflict. The other thing that we started controlling for or looking for was the ability to give and receive feedback. That's also a
Mhm.
question that we ask now. Like, tell us about a time that you got feedback from a supervisor that was less than positive.
Yeah.
And in that tale, we had to hear about how, first of all, they're like, well, I've never received that kind of feedback. We're like, okay, well, it doesn't disqualify you, but it's a red flag because like we do that a lot. We give people a lot of feedback because we need people to get on the ball quick. And if you're not accustomed to that, like you may not be successful in the environment. So that's when I was listening to you talk, that's something I thought that's something we definitely look for.
So Gab, I think that you said it in the idea of being able to communicate. And this is what you realize the more television you watch or the more drama, the more shows you watch, is that all drama is created through lack of communication. All drama is created by putting off talking to someone or thinking someone said something different. And so if we can get people to talk and take feedback and give feedback and be able to communicate even when they're struggling with conflict, right? The idea of conflict, that's going to be better. I wanted to bring this back to the idea of that Chris brought in earlier, this idea that how do we relate as people of a certain age? How do we relate to 20, to 17, 18 to 25-year-olds? And what I would challenge all camp directors and full-time people is that I think the foundation is the same. I think that no matter where technology goes and where social justice goes, I think the foundation blocks for building amazing camp staff have remained the same for years. And whether we call that moral or whether we call that, whatever, I don't know how to say it, but the idea of the foundation of good camp staff are still people who care, who are willing to learn, who are willing to teach, and willing to be part of something bigger than themselves and see that it's bigger than themselves. I don't think that phones are going to ruin that. I don't think that social media is going to change that. I think that here at Pierce, we really indoctrinate, and I will say the word indoctrinate. We really indoctrinate our staff with the idea of to do what needs to be done to give our campers the most amazing camp experience, right? That's your job. I think where all the camp directors, not all of them, a bunch of camp directors who I spoke to about last summer, where staff struggled was their inabilities to do tasks that seemingly were done with very little effort in previous years. And what the directors were saying to me is that it's like they don't want to do them, or they don't want to give all of that energy to what camp is. And I think that's going to be our biggest challenge going forward is how do we retrain these staff members to buy into what camp is while still protecting their mental health, but also building their grit, because grit's just another foundation block that we want to give staff when they leave camp.
Yes, Joe, I agree with that. And just to clarify what I was saying before, I didn't mean to imply that I'm getting to the old fuddy-duddy age where I can't talk to young people anymore. It's like, get off my lawn. It's not quite that, because you're absolutely right. I think the qualities of a camp director, the qualities of someone who wants to work at a camp have probably not changed so much since I was 19, right? Since I started doing this. It's all the things that you're saying. It's grit. It's the ability to care, to build something bigger than yourself, to contribute to something bigger than yourself. I think what I've been reacting to lately, and I've been meditating on lately, is that like in watching the assistant directors communicate with the camp staff, they are using language and techniques that wouldn't leap to mind for me, because they are similar in age to the people they are supervising. Not to say that I can't supervise the staff, I can, but I'm coming from a particular perspective and out of a particular kind of culture of habit that I have to really work as I age to make sure that I can still, not that I can train staff, I can train staff all damn day, but that I'm doing it in a way that they are going to respond to easily. That is something that I'm thinking about. Not that I can't do it, but I observe the facility through which like the younger leadership staff is able to get their points across, is able to get results, not necessarily quicker, but probably with less effort than I can. And I marvel at that.
And I think that's what a lucky team you have you think about those things and notice that there's certain areas that you need to learn and you're meditating on, and you're finding that it's difficult, and you're trying to find a way that you can connect with your staff. And I think for me, that's my hope for anybody that's a leader, or anybody that's leading me for that matter, is struggling, is saying, man, how do I connect with this person? How do I do this? I'm seeing I'm having a difficulty. And that to me is uncomfortable, sure, but it's so positive, Chris. It's very caring.
Well, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I challenge anyone listening to really consider these things. You know, whenever anyone says like, well, this is the way that we've always done it, it's worked for us since 1980. That's my first indication, like, okay, you need to stop, pause, take a nap, wake up, and think about your entire life. Like, you have to think about your choices. Because, you know, like I don't do anything the way I did 5 years ago. I always point this out, especially like our kids. Like 5 years ago, you were a completely different person who cared about different things. And that's true also with our vocation. That's very true with where you are as a professional. 5 years ago, I didn't know the things that I didn't know. There was no way to know. And I think it's really worthwhile in thinking about staff. Again, don't tell yourself that because you're 40, 50, or 60 that you can't work with young people. That's dumb. That's not true. But if you are 40, 50, and 60, communicating with a 22-year-old is going to have challenges that you may not foresee going in. And it's to be cognizant of that is going to make you a better camp director. It's going to make you a better communicator, and therefore a better person, is to really think about that. And it's something I think about all the time, because I'm still learning things about Gen Z that just challenge the way that I think as an older person. And that's both, it's good and bad. It's just different, and all of it is learning.
It's a lot of, you're right. And it's a lot of learning, and it's sometimes difficult. You know, I was in the closet for so many years because the community around me wasn't a supportive community necessarily for me to be out. And the ease that my queer staff have and my queer campers have, I both feel so grateful and mildly jealous at the same time. And
absolutely. Absolutely.
So I have, you know, these feelings where it's like, this is so wonderful and I'm so happy, but I have my little, you know, green goblin on my shoulder that's like, it wasn't that easy when I was their age. I could be better if somebody created the space for me. But I think that, you know, if we look at some of the people in our lives that are older, that are great leaders, that have held space for us, I'm just realizing how much of a pain in the butt I was for them and how much they worked hard to create that space. And, but I do think it has been a heck of a past 2 years. And I can't help but think that it's not just generational. It's just that we are the adults that the responsibility is falling on, and people are frustrated. And I'm just grateful that they can share that frustration. And I hope that I can surround myself with people like you two to help give me strength to keep doing the work that I'm doing, because it is going to take strength, and we need to support each other in doing it.
Can I add something really quick as we talk about qualities we're looking for? I know we're probably nearing the end of this.
Yeah.
We say this every year, that we're not hiring for this summer, we're hiring for this summer and next summer. We need people to come back for 2 years, because you'll be so much better the second year. And investing to training you for a single season is, I need to be careful how I say this, it's not entirely worth the entire team's time to teach you to work for one season. It's too much investment. So we're always that's someone I'm looking for, someone who thinks that not just that my camp highlight is a good idea, but that camping is a good idea. And that this isn't, I mean, sure, maybe you're not going to go on to be a camp professional, but that you appreciate the fact that this is actually an industry, that there's a culture around this, and that you're interested in sampling it, not forever, but hopefully for at least 2 years. So I'm just want to throw that in. That's something that we look for.
Yeah, I think there's lots of challenges coming up for us next summer, especially for a camp like us who hasn't run for 2 summers. But I did plan, and I hired 16 and 17-year-olds this summer, even though there was no camp, and had them do things with the basis that they would come back next summer. Right. So if I had 10 staff this summer, if 7 of them come back next summer, at least I have a better foundation than if I had no one.
Yes.
And I think that the idea of how we talk, how people are able to talk, and how we can relate and get these people back to camp, I think that this is a super important topic. And I'm sure here on CampHacker that we will talk about staffing more than once this season as we go forward. But let's, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. And what we're going to do is take a bit of time for our tool of the week. Chris, what's your tool of the week?
So I went back in our notes and I saw that this is something that you recommended, Joe, in 2014. But I figured that is enough time has gone by. I was inspired because like you and I are using the same microphone, and I just thought we should just like shout that out. It's 2021, which means that if you don't have a podcast, you are far behind the curve. So if you're looking to start one, like get a Blue Yeti microphone. I have to say, like I use this, it's just not for podcasts, but like because we've all been, living in this virtual online space. I can't tell you how many times people are like, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Oh, it's a little choppy. And I'm like, hold on, let me get my Blue Yeti. And then you plug it in and then it's great. So I would recommend the Blue Yeti to anybody because I've had it for several years. I've been doing all my podcasts on it. I think it sounds really great, and not for nothing. It's low cost for, I think, the quality you're getting. It's about in America here, it's about $119. And like I said, I've had it for years and the quality has not dipped. So that's my recommendation. Let people hear your voice, Blue Yeti microphone.
That is awesome. And I can also say that this Blue Yeti that I'm using is 10 years old, I believe, at this point. I'm going to share my tool next. I am recommending what in the show notes is called a adjustable light stand / tripod, which sounds like I'm underselling you on this, but if you go and see it, what it is, have you ever had a tripod that you can't get high enough, or it's not quite adjustable enough, or you need it to go off the side, not off the top? This adjustable light stand we bought a few years ago before the pandemic. Our camp bought it so that we would have the right angle to shoot Zoom meetings for our board meetings for board members who couldn't be present. So we were thinking about this before the pandemic, and it can raise up to 7.5, 8 feet in the air. And it is brilliant. So today I was shooting some video for my website and for Camp's website. And the top mount on it mounts in the top and it has 2 sizes of holes. So you can screw a regular shoe, like a regular mic or a phone, a camera into it, or it has a slightly larger one. But it also has a hole at the side so that if you want to hold your camera in a different orientation, so if you have a phone, it's brilliant and not that expensive. So it's an adjustable light stand / tripod, and it's well worth it. And we'll go from there. Gab, what is your tool of the week?
My tool of the week is an app and it's a desktop app called Shift. And it's an app that allows you to have all of your workstations in one place and manage multiple accounts without having to log in and out of different accounts. So if you're managing 3 different Gmail accounts and you have to constantly keep logging in and out, this allows you to not do that. If you're also taking care of different Facebooks, or you don't want to go into your Facebook and just be on your work Facebook, it allows you to do that. The top 2 things that for me make sense with Shift is that it keeps me focused. When I go into a web browser, my ADHD, no matter how recently I took my medicine. I am like all of a sudden down a portal of I don't know what. And it's always fascinating. And I'm happy I'm there, but I've just wasted 15 to 20 minutes. The same thing with Facebook. So this allows me to streamline everything and keep focus, but then also just that pain in the butt from logging in, logging out, et cetera, et cetera. And the organization aspect of it is really, really helpful. I brought it to one of my staff members, I think about 3 years ago. She tried it. She says, this doesn't work for me. And recently she says that she's been using it for the past 6 months and it has just changed how she works, just her day to day. So Shift the app.
That's awesome. And I think you said a really important thing there, Gab. Sometimes tools don't work for everybody. When we recommend these tools of the week,
Yes.
take what you need, leave what you don't, and please
Yes.
don't judge us unless it's about scroll saws.
Oh,
Oh, yes, I got it in there,
on.
Chris.
And on that note, everybody,
Hey, it is the end of this episode. Chris, where can people reach out to you or follow what you do?
people can find me on Instagram at Camp Highlight or at Planet Chris 1.
That is awesome. Thank you. Gabz, where can people find you?
They can check out where I work at waro.com. They can email me at info@waro.com. Waro's OUAREAU, or they can follow me on Instagram, Gabrielle Rail with 2 L's.
That is awesome. Thank you. And if you want to reach out to me, Chris and Gab both know that I've given my phone number numerous times. Nobody has ever called me, which is awesome. So you can email me, joe@campisbetter.com. Camp is Better is the Pierce Williams website, and you can find out personal things if I ever update them on yoyojoe.com, YOYOJOE. Thanks, everybody.